Good evening, Meruchim Habayim Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. Tonight's class you're getting in earlier timing than the usual due to personal obligations. First, tonight's class was sponsored by some friends for the Hatzlacha and blessing of our dear friend Rabbi David Gai ben Bacha Galit. Hashem Yishmerehu v'Yachayeu. Should be happy, healthy, safe, protected, and all the good and all the blessing in the Torah should be on him and his family always. Amen v'amen. So, Parashat Korach. Even Rashi says on this parashat there's a lot to talk about. Not in that many words. To be objective, Rashi HaKadosh writes on Vaikach Korach, on the first two words of the parasha, Parasha zu yafa nidreshet b'midrash Rabbi Tanchuma. This parasha has a nice darash in the Midrash Tanchuma. Yafani Dreshet. So Al Derech HaRemez, everybody says, many Sfarim came up with the same conclusion. Parasha zu Yafani Dreshet, period. This parasha has a lot to learn from. Korach, the objecting party, we'll call it. There's always a lot to learn from. The consequence of causing chaos in the name of God for no reason. But before we talk about the parasha itself, I gotta share with you a live story that's happening as we speak. I don't remember the exact date, but in April sometime, there was a group of women that are married that work in a business in New Jersey. Many of them are religious Jewish women. And they decided that they have a workmate who is single, and some years passed by, and they would love to see her married. They're all married, and hopefully happily. And this friend seems to have whatever lack of luck or struggle or whatever it may be along the way. And what could they possibly do to help it? So thank God they eliminated all the things not to do, like saying soon by you and it must be so hard and all the other stupidity that people tell people when they're going through rough times. But they wanted to do something proactively. Shatchanim they're not. And if you don't know what you're doing in that area, don't try a matchmake. Just because somebody's single and somebody else is single is not a reason to try and make a match. That might be a reason to make a disaster. So they concluded, inspired by one leader in the group, that they're going to go about a very interesting thing. They hired a woman to speak who has a lot of experience with this, wrote articles about it from what I understand as well, who promotes a value that's called machsom lepi. Machsom means a seal, a muzzle. Lepi for your mouth, for my mouth. And what does she do? How does this work? She gave a little talk and explained people the importance of watching what comes out of your mouth. And not only what comes out, in what tone it comes out of your mouth. And then taught some basics about the idea. And got 25 women. I actually held the paper before in my hand and counted myself. I wanted to verify every single detail. Had 25 women commit that they split the awake hours of most people, which is approximately 7 a.m. to 12 a.m., between the 25 women. Some hours was more than one woman, some hours were longer periods, more than 1 hour, 2 hours, that each person committed to that hour or 2 hours that they're taking upon themselves for the merit of this girl to have a happy life and to find the right one. They're going to be careful what comes out of their mouth. And let me explain to you what be careful what comes out of their mouth is, because I was exposed to the extent of this and the beauty of it just now, an hour ago. When I looked at the paper, I saw 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., whatever, different times. So jokingly, I said, probably 7 o'clock in the morning is the easiest time. And it's early, people just woke up. That's definitely not a time that people have patience or energy to gossip. And I was explained that I got it all wrong. Because it's not only about gossip. Machsom lepi that they did was about everything. So I said, a mother wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning and has kids that have to be on the bus by 8. The probability of her raising her voice or saying something negative or critical towards one of the children, even though it's a tragedy and it's a version of murder, is very high, unfortunately. Because we recklessly endanger the emotional well-being of our children without even realizing it sometimes. So that was actually the hardest time to get somebody to commit to. But one holy Jewish woman committed to that. 7 to 8 in the morning, she's not only not talking gossip, or lashon hara, or rechilut, no lies, no exaggerations, no threats, no negativity, no nothing. Perfect, pure, positive, only perfect, only pure. Unreal. Really unreal. Like this, they divided up today between 25 holy women. What do I say? The story is going on live as we speak. As we speak, this girl is getting engaged. Now, what's amazing about this? That when earlier today, this girl told her boss that she's leaving early or whatever it was, I don't know exactly, because she's getting engaged tonight, or this afternoon. They kind of questioned her. She didn't know that they were doing this for her the entire time. And they questioned her, I don't know if it was direct or roundabout way, but when she started dating. And she told them what date what date she started dating. The day was a few days after they started this machzom, from what I understand. But when they dug deeper into the story, they found that the same exact day that they planned to do this machzom idea between the friends was exactly the day that the shadchan came up with this idea, this shidduch, that God bless this girl is engaged now, and she should live a happy and healthy life and build a bayit ne'eman b'Yisrael with everything good, Be'ezrat Hashem. Yeah, that's mind-boggling. Not years later it happened, or 3 months later it happened, or 6 months later it happened, then we would start saying, was it this, was it that, was it the other? Exactly the same day. But to me, there's something that maybe even is more impressive in the story, honestly. That you have 25 women that technically are, they're married. Or some of them maybe were married, but at one point they were married. And overall, they have a good life. They work in a good company. They make a good living. They have very good work terms. I know the business. Things are going in their way. And that people in today's selfish generation, where we normally only think about ourselves, would get together and invest time and effort and make a sacrifice. And the sacrifice of closing your mouth and only positive, honest, beautiful things to come out of it is the greatest sacrifice that exists in the world. It's harder than going to the moon and back. That they should be willing to go that far out of care of a workmate. That's what it is. It's just a workmate. That's what's most impressive to me. The level of Ahavat Yisrael, the level of care and compassion and concern for another person. Mind-boggling. Literally mind-boggling. And honestly, I probably should end the speech right here, because that's the message that should resonate. But it's also time-befitting, because the opposite extreme of what Korach did. Korach went to talk bad about Moshe, to cause Mahloket, to cause fights, to do everything he tried to do. Here are people in today's generation that went to the opposite extreme. And look what Yeshuot brings. And I strongly advise that if somebody knows somebody who's in the Shat Tzara and they care about him, and there's a lot of people that care about him, whatever, to get involved in this movement, I'm willing to be supportive of it in any way I can, directly or indirectly. And it's amazing. Literally amazing. The same people that were involved in the initial inception of this have many, many stories of situations, whether it's marriage, health-related matters. One of the stories I was told today was there was a child who was in a bad medical situation. I don't remember the cause, but I think it was an accident, if I'm not mistaken. And the doctors wanted to amputate a leg. By Minan, a young child's not going to have a leg. Frightening. Shalom nida, shalom nida. And the people in the neighbors heard about it, and they cared, they panicked. They were like, what can we do? They decided they're going to do this machzom. Within hours at a time they decided. They didn't even do it yet. They just decided that they're arranging it and starting it. The doctor came in and said he figured out a way to save the leg. They won't have to amputate the leg anymore. Unreal. That's when you think positive, talk positive, and don't gossip. And on the contrary, if you think negative and talk negative about people and go behind their back and do onat varim and do onat mamon and do disgusting things, bad mouth, of course, L'Shem Shamayim, in the name of God and whatever, then all these blessings that happen to those who don't do it, the flip, God forbid, is going to happen to you. Literally. It's Hashem doesn't let anybody get away with being a backstabber or with talking bad about people and causing people harm by trying to destroy their image or something like that. It's frightening things that happen to people that tried to do that to others. Even if it was for business and even if they thought they were right and even if it was under the context of a business fight and they thought they were right. Anybody who tried to do harm with their mouth to somebody else, God's mouth did harm to them, Bar Minan. And therefore it's something that we should take to heart and be very careful and stay very far away from. Korach, one word, Mahloket. Fights. He wanted to fight Moshe Rabbeinu. He couldn't deal with the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was in power. Fights. Let's fight. So there's a beautiful remez, hint, that about Mahloket, about the punchline of Mahloket. Let's conclude and then go backwards. We're going to start from the end and work reverse. The word Mahloket in Hebrew is spelled Mem, Chet, Lamed, Kuf, Taf. In a wonderful sefer that I quote from sometimes called Mefik Malgaliyot, very, very nice sefer. They just came out with the Bamidbar volumes from a wonderful rabbi who's the Mad Atar of Carmiel, of Avraham Tzvi Margalit Shlita, Hashem Shwach over me. I learned a lot of nice things from him. I don't know him personally, but I learned a lot of nice things from him. Amazing man. So he brings a remez down in his sefer. But it's brought down another Sfarim before him. But I saw it by him, so that's why I'm quoting from him. There's Mahloket, we said, is spelled Mem, Chet, Lamed, Kuf, Taf. What's the beginning and end of the word? The first letter and the last letter of the word, meaning the beginning and the end of the story of every Mahloket. The first letter is Mem, the last letter is Taf, Met, Bar Minan. Met means dead. If you get involved with Mahloket, your end is going to be death. Death doesn't have to mean physically, it could be emotionally, it could be spiritually, it could be that you lose your Olam Haba forever. But by the way, the Chafetz Chaim says that even though you're never allowed to be Moser Din LaShamayim, you're never allowed to tell God bad things about a Jew, meaning to pray that something bad should happen to a Jew, but on a Motzi Shema and somebody who spreads bad rumors about you or talks bad about you in a false way, you're allowed to be Moser Din LaShamayim. That's how, because God takes that's the worst sin. There's nothing lower than that. There's nothing worse than that. That's the lowest a person can get. And it's frightening that the Yetzer Hara catches those who play religious and whatever, and you would think that they're the most quote-unquote holy, and dafka them, they get involved in Mahloket, and dafka them get involved in Motzi Shema and Lashon Hara. Because over there, is all their Torah and any mitzvah that they ever did, even by mistake, is all wiped out. Met. Killed it all. That's why we have to go to the opposite extreme. And even though I'm the eternal optimist and I try to speak only positive always and everything, but this is life critical, so I got to say the facts as they are and say it as it is. Stay away from Mahloket. It's not worth it. There was a rabbi in Tel Aviv. He was the rabbi of Tel Aviv once upon a time. His name was Frenkel. So Frenkel says a beautiful, beautiful chidush on this. Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish nation in the midst of this Mahloket an interesting thing. Psukim say, this is in Bamidbar, Chavtet Lamed, Im k'mot ha'adam, kol ha'adam yimutu neile. If, like a normal death, these people will die, ufkudat kol ha'adam yipaked alehem, and their ending will be like a normal ending, lo Hashem shlachani. So then you know that I, Moshe Rabbeinu, wasn't sent by God. But ve'im b'riyah yivra Hashem, if God's going to create a special creation, upatzita adama et pia, and the ground will open its mouth, ubal'a otam, and will swallow them, but not just them, ve'et kol asher lahem, and everything that's theirs, meaning even their property, v'yaldu chayim she'ola, and they will be swallowed alive, buried alive, v'yidatem, so then you'll know that these people fought and upset God himself. Meaning this, Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to make the point simply, that this is not a personal thing. There's a fight against Hashem, because Moshe Rabbeinu was just operating as a messenger of God. And if these people are fighting Moshe Rabbeinu, they're technically fighting Borei Olam himself. Okay, the obvious question is that Frankel asks, is that Mela, if they fought with God and Moshe is right, and Hashem's upset about it, so we understand why such an extreme thing, that the ground will open up and it will swallow them. Balautam, sorry. We understand, that makes sense. But if Lo Hashem Shlachani, right, that was the first part of the pasuk, that he's saying, if God didn't send them, what's going to happen? Kimot Adam yimutun kol eile. They're going to die like a normal death. Wait a second. If they didn't do anything wrong, why should they die at all? Meaning, he said, either way, they're going to die. But now, if they're going to die this extreme death of the ground opening itself up and swallowing them and everything, they belong alive, so then you know that I'm coming in God's name. And they upset God, they fought against God. But if not, they're going to die. So obviously the simple answer is that maybe Moshe Rabbeinu meant that they're going to die at the time that they were supposed to die, not now. That's one answer. But Frankel says something else. He says a very powerful answer that should hit us in the gut very hard. He says, if you take part in a Mahloket, in a dispute, even if you're on the side of the justice, even if you're on the right side, as we call it, and even if God himself says it's the right side, you're still going to bring on yourself suffering. You're still going to bring on yourself death. Because from Mahloket, you have to run away. And how far do you have to run away? A lot quicker than you run away from a bomb or from fire. Because who's there with it when there's a Mahloket? Frankel writes, the Malach HaMavet himself, the angel of death. The angel of death himself is there waiting for you. You want to get involved? I'm right here to take care of you, he says. I'm right here. Yeah, there's a known story that once a Jew came to the Chafetz Chaim and he said that where the Chafetz Chaim lived in Radin, the other side of town, there was some fight between a few people. There was an active fight going on. He was telling this to the Chafetz Chaim, maybe to ask for help, what to do, I'm not sure. And the Chafetz Chaim, instead of responding to this Jew that came in to discuss with him the fight, got up and went to his wife and he said, Rebbetzin, we got to get out of here out of the house quickly. We got to run. And she said, what do you mean, Rabbi? What's the rush? Where are we running to? And he said, if there's a fire burning on the other end of the city, so then we got to be scared it'll spread, right? But you have a certain amount of time of evacuation. We can get our documents together, this, that, then we evacuate. So, but if there's a fire that's on the rooftops, flying from rooftop to rooftop, there's no time to save anything. You got to run before you get burnt. Comes the Chafetz Chaim and told his wife, and he said, when there's a Mahloket in the city, if people are fighting in the city, that's a lot worse than a fire on the rooftops is spreading. The Malach HaMavet himself is here. And the angels that are in charge of all the suffering, they're all here. And everybody here could pay the price. So we got to run. We first got to get out of here. Then we'll see, once things settle, to come back, what to do. But to be part of it, to have anything to do with it, that for sure not. We got to run. We got to get very far away. That was the Chafetz Chaim, who was the master of Shmirat HaLashon and so cautious in every word that came out and everything that he said or didn't say in any way, shape, or form. The great Chafetz Chaim himself, that was how far he took it. But now let's say a nice chidush. There is a Gemara, Masech Brachot. The Gemara is Masech Brachot of Samach Dal Amud Aleph. Over there the Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. The Torah sages, the real Talmidei Chachamim, they spread peace in the world. What does it mean? Because they spread, marbim, they multiply, they spread peace in the world. I never saw in the Nobel Prize list, not that that's a great honor to get a Nobel Prize, that the World Peace Prize was given to Talmid Chacham. Unfortunately, I've seen it being given to a lot of lowlives, but I never saw it being given to Talmid Chacham. But the Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. So one of the many explanations over there is that Talmidei Chachamim, part of their role in life, is to calm things down, to defuse situations, escalated situations. So that's what it means, that if a Talmid Chacham hears the two Jews are fighting, like Aaron HaKohen did, so he goes and he speaks to this one, speaks to that one, calms them down, diffuses it, and there's more peace in the world. And there's more peace in the world, so they're ma'abim shalom, they cause more peace to come out into the world. That's one of many pshatim on this. But let's say another pshat. This pshat comes also from this same Rabbi Avraham Tzvi Margalit Shlita. It's a beautiful, beautiful pshat that he has. The Gemara has many examples of things that God put a certain quantity of in the world. Like this 10 kabim of speech that was placed in the world, and there's 10 kabim of other things that were placed. Meaning many of our day-to-day routine elements, there's a certain amount that's given to the world. So he says, an unbelievable thing. There's a certain amount of fighting, of mahloket, of disagreements that are put into the world. Kosh Baruch Hu decides that in the year Tafshin Pei Aleph, there'll be X amount of mahloket in the world. Whatever the amount will be. Where that mahloket is going to go, and how is that mahloket going to be used, that Hashem doesn't say. That man has free will to decide where it's channeling that energy to. Based on this, let's learn another Gemara. The Gemara is in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed Amud Bet. The Gemara says, Ma et oivim bashar. Pasuk in Tehillim, Kuf Chaf Zayin Hey. What does it mean, et oivim bashar, enemies by the gate? Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, Afilu av v'bno, even a father and his son, harav v'talmido, a rabbi and his student, she'oskim b'torah b'shar echad, that they're sitting and studying together in one place. Na'asim oivim zeh et zeh, they look to be enemies one to another. What does it mean they look to be enemies one to another? They're arguing. The rabbi says this way, his student says, I don't understand, it doesn't make sense to me. The student says a chidush, the rabbi says, you're wrong, I have a proof otherwise. Same thing with a father and son, talking and learning. They come from different generations, so they definitely see the learning differently. And either way, Shivim Panim La Torah, the 70 ways to understand. But the Gemara continues. They don't only argue. Ve'inam zazim misham. They don't budge. Ad shenasim oavim zeh et zeh. Until they love each other. Shneimar et vahev besufa al tikri besufa ela besofa. That at the end, they're going to have true love. Meaning, that this is a version of Mahloket. They have a disagreement. Shammai and Hillel disagreed throughout the entire Shas. Abaye and Rava disagreed many, many, many times in Shas as well. And so on in the list of names. But that's two examples everybody knows. But even though they had those discrepancies in understanding and in rights and wrongs, to the point that Shammai would consider somebody a kosher child when Hillel considered them a not kosher child, and vice versa, in the Gemarot and Yevamot, for example, to the point that what one considered a mitzvah, the other person considered a sin many times, and vice versa. By default, vice versa, obviously. But they were still oavim zeh et zeh. They didn't say the other guy's wrong. They said, that's his way of seeing it, and my way of seeing it's different, and therefore I have to go with what I believe. Today, everything becomes personal. If I think the halakha is A, and you think the halakha is B, so now we're not in that opinion. We don't belong to that crowd. We do things differently. No, that's not a mahloket l'shem shamayim. That's a lowlife. When in the Gemara they argued non-stop, but they argued for the same goal. The goal was for the truth, and therefore they respected each other's conclusions, even if they were extremely different. To the point that the Gemara says, we quoted this many times, that Shammai and Hillel's grandchildren all got married to each other, even though technically they shouldn't have been allowed to, because one believed that the other one's kids weren't kosher. But if according to you it is kosher, then according to me it's also kosher. So it's Mahloket l'shem shamayim. If that's the case, so we could put together a beautiful puzzle over here and take away a good idea. Everybody has in them a certain amount of energy and a certain amount of rush that they have to argue and they have to feel like they're right and they have to voice their opinion and whatever. Idiots do it on Facebook and Twitter and on blogs and fighting with people and fighting with their own families and fighting with their own friends and their own members of their own community and whatever. Idiots, there's no better word for that. And that was a very gentle word. The real words should be a lot harsher. The Malach HaMavet's friends, that's what they are. But a smart person says, yeah, I have an urge to argue, so now I'll go learn Gemara together with my Chavuta, and I'll let it out over there. He'll understand one way, and I'll understand the other way. I'll come with the Rosh, he'll come with the Rashba, I'll come with the Ritva, he'll come with the Ramban. The Rambam and the Ra'avad argued consistently throughout everything. And the Ravad used very harsh words on the Rambam, but their love and respect for each other's ideology, the Ravad's respect for the Rambam had no bounds. Despite him writing that things that the Rambam wrote are close to Kfirah Bar Minan, we don't understand what that means, why he wrote that to that extreme. But because it was a Mahloket L'Shem Shamayim, the Mahloket was over something true, over what does God want? What's the real truth? It wasn't over emotions and my feelings, and I have to be right, and you're wrong, and my way, and your way, and I'm better than you, and you're not as good as me. Based on this, the Pshat's amazing. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. That we said there's a certain amount of Mahloket that's given to the world. Now this Mahloket, it's going to happen either way. The Talmidei Chachamim sit in the Bet Midrash all day, and what do? They study analogy of the Talmud, which is all disagreements. It's all Mahloket. They use the Yud Gimel Midot Shat Torah Nidreshet B'hem to analyze the Torah through what seems to be disagreements. So they utilize a lot of the quantity of disagreement that was given to the world, and by doing that, they eliminate other people using it for bad things. And that's how they bring the ultimate peace into the world. And if there would be more Talmidei Chachamim learning, then there wouldn't be ever any Mahloket in the world. There would be world peace. Everybody talks about that. One day we have to get the world peace. It's a goal we should strive for. Which I happen to agree with. It would be a nice thing. I don't think it's ever going to happen until Mashiach comes. But in theory, it's a nice thing. The only way to get anything closer to that is to strengthen the hands of the Talmidei Chachamim that are sitting and studying Talmud all day, because they are the ones who actually reduce the amount of Mahloket in the world. They're the only ones who reduce the amount of Mahloket in the world. So they're so busy with the Machlokot and the whole Shas and the Poskim and everywhere that at that point they take part of that power away, and other people can't. They can't do it. They don't have as much Mahloket to hold on to anymore. Rabbi Zalman Meltzer said over a story about the great Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector from Kovna. Zecher Tzadik Kadosh V'chas Ch'to Yagen Aleinu. Every on Shabbat Shuvah Bli Neder we say over the famous story of how he became who he became. But just to understand briefly for those who don't know anything about Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan, which would be sad, go study a little bit. Besides for being a genius in Torah that there's no way that I can even grasp, so I definitely can't describe it, and a giant in Yirat Shamayim, he was also a giant in kindness and in a soft heart and in care and compassion towards people. And he was accepted upon the majority of Am Yisrael to the point that when he said something, people accepted it from him like as if it was like Moshe Rabbeinu talking on Har Sinai. It was unreal. And there's amazing stories about the chesed that he had. And it wasn't just chesed, acts of kindness, because he understood idealistically it's the right thing to do. It was embedded in his DNA that that's the only way to behave and that's the only option. It was a part of his actual essence. Unbelievable. So once, if you want to know how soft his heart was, before we get to the story that Rabbi Zalman said, once he was leaving, he had to go somewhere. He went with his son and with a few other people, and they traveled a full day worth of traveling. It was before today, airplanes and that. And he was tired. It was towards the end of the day, and he turned to his one of his people that came with him, and he said, "Listen, I have an emergency message that I have to send to my wife in Kovna. All right, they traveled all day, 8 hours away, 10 hours away. Here's a letter." He wrote something on a paper, sealed it in an envelope. "Do me a personal favor, go back to Kovna and give it to my wife a second earlier." This guy didn't really understand. What could be so urgent? Can't wait another few hours. We'll go back home anyway. A day or two. But okay, the rabbi says, no questions asked. Took the letter, he put it in his pocket, and then he went back on his way to go back to Kovna to give it to the wife. But as the hours were going by, what do you think was burning inside of him? Curiosity. What could be so important to the great rabbi of Am Yisrael, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan, that he has to send an emergency letter back to his wife, and I can't even wait a day or two? What could possibly be? So he did what Al Pi Halacha stressed you're not allowed to do. That's to read somebody else's paper, or to look, or to anything that takes away somebody's privacy, simply put. Mind your own business, keep your head where it should be, and what somebody else is doing is not your place, and it's Gnevat Dat and many, many other sins as well. Besides, you're a degenerate, a lowlife, a real lowlife. If somebody's capable of looking at somebody else's phone or listening to somebody else's conversation, whatever, that's definitely somebody who I don't want to associate with in any way, shape, or form under any terms. Because a person like that, by me, his next step is being a murderer. They go hand in hand. They literally go hand in hand. To be such a lowlife and have zero, not a recollection of ethics at all, in order to behave that way, that there's no words. But okay, he couldn't control himself. He opened up the letter, and he wanted to see what it said there. He had the shock of his life. It said in the letter, "My dear wife, in the past few days, there's been a cat that was hanging around our house outside, and I was able to tell that they're hungry. It's a hungry cat. So every morning I'd make sure to take a bowl with milk and to put it outside for the cat, so the cat should have what to drink, to eat, whatever, however you want to consider it. I'm not an expert on cats. I don't know what their diet is. I forgot to tell you about it before I left, and I'm scared that tomorrow morning the cat's not going to have what to drink. So please keep in mind to put out a bowl of milk for the cat tomorrow morning." This was the Gaon Olam that knew the whole Torah Baal Peh simultaneously. They wrote the most deep Sfarim that it takes hours to analyze one page over there. That was a legend in giving over Torah and in giving over the train of thought in Torah and everything. That great mind was also busy with emergency sending back somebody for hours with a letter because a cat may not have milk. Now that sounds like a wow story, right? But the truth is, it's not a wow story. If he wasn't like that, he would never be able to be a real great person in Torah, because Hashem would have never given him siyat dishmaya. Those who are great people in Torah and have siyat dishmaya in Torah is because they are good people through and through. Not just that they're brilliant and they're knowledgeable. That's not enough when it comes to Torah. No, but back to Rabbi Zalman's story. Rabbi Zalman said, one day Rabbi Tzachon got a letter from a community in a neighboring town with a halakha question that had to do with basar v'chalav, isur v'heter. And he read the question and he was mind-boggled because there's a very simple answer to the question. And there's a shach that clearly says that it's not permitted. And everybody knows this shach, a very famous shach. And it's not really argued much. So why are they sending him a question? And from a different town to send to the rabbi of Kovna, the big rabbi, such a question? The whole thing was weird to him. So he thought for a minute, and he said he thinks he figured it out. It must be that the people in the town don't like their rabbi. So they try to set him up and ask him this question in a tricky way, so he shouldn't understand the question, and therefore he's going to say a wrong answer. And that's what happened. He gave them the wrong halakha answer. And now they're sending me a letter that I should write back. I don't even understand what the question is. It's an open shach. It's asur. What's the question at all? And then they're going to flash it in their rabbi's name and say, look, you don't know what you're talking about. We want to get rid of you. We're done with you. And Rabbi said, I'm not going to take part in lowlifes trying to fight a Talmid Chacham that maybe made a mistake or forgot a halacha. Not only that, he felt obligated to protect the rabbi. So look how far he went. He sent back a letter answering the same answer that he assumed, the wrong answer that he assumed the Talmid Chacham must have answered. But of course he can't do that because he can't cause people to do a sin. So a few hours later he sent an emergency telegram. I sent an answer before, but I made a mistake. I forgot. There's a shach that says clearly otherwise, and it's asur, and therefore please disregard my first letter and go based on the shach that says so. And he later on said he did this so the community should see that even Rabbi Tzchak Elchanan was able to forget that shach. The shach that he never forgot. But he acted it out. Just to protect the honor of the rabbi and not to give a way for the community to have a mahloket with their rabbi. He was willing to embarrass himself. He was willing to belittle himself. And he was willing to use all his thought to do so. To put thought on how to belittle himself. Just to protect that there shouldn't be mahloket in Am Yisrael, and that people shouldn't be able to utilize something against each other, and definitely not against a rabbi that forgot a piece of information or something in a psak halacha. This is an unbelievable thing. No. So, There's a great, great rabbi who we quote from sometimes, the Mashgiach. His nickname is a tzaddik that I was very close to for many years, since I was a young teenager. Even before a teenager, actually, now I'm thinking about it. Since I was 11 years old. His name was Reb Don Segal Shlita. Hashem should give him a flash. He's not young anymore, he should give him new strength. So, he says over what he heard, Vort, Chidush, in the name of the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, the first Vizhnitzer Rebbe. So, we know that if somebody gives you a blessing, wishes you well, whatever it is, so we respond, Litvish respond, V'chein lemar, the same to you. And al pi Kabbalah, we don't say mal, because mal means bitter, so we say V'chein lemor. Same idea, same to you. Meaning that you should also be blessed with that blessing. Why? Because we see in the Gemara, Masachet Megillah of Chav Zayin Amud Bet, that it says over there that Rav gave Rav Huna a blessing, that he should wear expensive clothing. He should be covered with expensive clothes. And that was a symbolic blessing, meaning he blessed him that he should be rich. So when the Bracha happened, and it worked, obviously, he became rich, Rav was upset at Rav Huna, and he said, why didn't you bless me back that the same should be for me? Because if you would have blessed me back, V'chein lemo, I also would have been rich. So it cost me money. I could have also had. No. The truth is, Rav Huna became rich. Like the Gemara says in Masachet Ta'anit, Daf Chaf Amud Bet, that Shayu Motziim Oto Ba'Piryon Shel Zahav. He used to have a golden chariot, we can call it. He drove not a BMW, he drove a Rolls Royce, a Bentley, in today's world of relating to things. And Rav was poor. Like the Gemara says in Masachet Chulin of Pedal Amud Aleph, that Rav only had meat to eat from Shabbat to Shabbat. Chazon Ish writes that what was the Kpeidah of Rav? What was the Kpeidah of Rav? So the Chazon Ish writes that the Kpeidah of Rav was, why did Rav get upset? Because every bracha of a Gdol Ador, of a great rabbi, of the leader of the generation, makes a big impact in Shamayim. And at that point, it becomes an Eit Ratzon, it becomes a time that the gates of heaven are open. That's why you should take advantage of that Eit Ratzon. He said, and why wasn't he makpid right away? Why wasn't he makpid right away? It says later on, when he became rich, he was upset. Why didn't he say V'chein lema? He should have been upset right away why he didn't say V'chein lema. So the Chazon Ish says, because he was such a nanav, he was so humble that he didn't consider himself a Gdol Ador, so he didn't consider it an Eit Ratzon. But after it already happened, and then he became rich, and the blessing happened, so then he was upset because he said, look, it was an Eit Ratzon in Shamayim, you could have blessed me back and it would have worked. So, on the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, when they used to give him blessings, right, people would bless the Rebbe all the time. He didn't want to say the word Mara. As I said, the Sfaradim, we don't do that to a Jew. So he would answer, V'chein lematok. So to the sweet person. So to the sweet person. But Abdon says over, now he understands why us Sfaradim, we don't say V'chein lemar, we say V'chein lemor. Mor is milashon mor k'tziyah. Mor k'tziyah with good smells, something positive. So V'chein lemor. What I want to take out of this, that I said, and that's the reason why I said it, is look just how much thought has to go into one word, and not one word. The word is the same. Now it's just a matter of how to pronounce it. Litvish had the custom, based on the Gemara's simple words, to say V'chein lemar. The Sfaradim said, no, mar is bitter. We're not going to use that word. But we have to give back the blessing. So we're going to give back the blessing. We're going to turn it into mo. In Vizhnitz, they had the custom to say V'chein lematok. So we also compliment the other guy that it was sweet of him to bless us. And all of that over one word. This is how thought out and careful a person has to be with every word that he says. And I'm telling you again, it's so easy to fall into this trap. So many people say so many stupid things every day. And the greatest tragedy of texting and social media and everything else was that people when they write things, they definitely don't care. And they just freely write anything and everything. And that's a great, great tragedy. Forget about the lives that they ruin and the trouble they cause, their own life. There's no way back. The Malach HaMavet is right there. And even if the person's physically living, he's spiritually dead, he lost his Olam Haba, he lost everything, he lost his blessing in life, he's going to suffer, he's going to have trouble, if not him, his children, his grandchildren, trouble after trouble after trouble. So what are you getting involved in this for? What do you need it for? Definitely when we're talking about Talmidei Chamim, Zakei Rabim, people have merits, people have done good things, Balei Chesed, Balei Tzedakah. Yeah, crazy, you're going to say something, you open your mouth, stay out, it's none of your business, it has nothing to do with you. Run away like fire, don't even hear it. Just run, stay out. And that's why the biggest Yetzer Hara that exists in Am Yisrael is Mahloket and gossip. Oh, I said it so many times, I'm going to say it again and again and again until one day we all understand it. Today in Klal Yisrael we have more Torah, definitely than since Chizkiyahu HaMelech, could be even more than that. We have more Chesed than anything I know historically written, at least, in any era. We have people that have all these movements and they don't talk in shul and they do this and they volunteer and we have so many beautiful things and organizations upon organizations upon organizations. The only thing we need is an organization to dismantle many of them because they're useless, but many useful ones as well. And movements and this and that and unreal, right? Unreal. V'item li sgula mikol ha'amim. Talking about close to 200,000 Talmidei Yeshiva in Israel learning non-stop in Mesirut Nefesh. And in the current political climate, it's a double Mesirut Nefesh. They're belittled and then, despite, they stay strong and they learn. And we don't see things getting easier. Actually, in the past few months, we saw things getting a lot harder. The Frum world is targeted time and time again, whether it was during COVID, later on, the tragedy in Miron, the tragedy in Kalin, and all these other crazy tragedies that we hear all the time. Shem Yirachim, just to be on one of these groups that volunteers to help people in time of need and to see how many needs there are a day is enough to make any normal person that has a quarter of a heart even sick. And people will ask, why? It's not fair. We're such a good nation. We do so much good. We're such good people. We mean so well. Where's Hashem? Why? Why does he let it happen? Now, I'm not God and I'm a spokesman. That's not the point. But I mean, what? What does Hashem want? You know what else we have today that we never had before to this extreme? Mahloket. I don't pray in this synagogue. I'm not part of that group. This is my clique. This is that. He's modern Orthodox. I'm ultra Orthodox. He's not good enough. She's this. He's that. And Hashem says, if that's the way you talk about my children, if you can't accept them all, then I can't accept you. Midah keneged midah. You can learn all day and all night, but if the shtend is flying in the yeshiva, then the yeshiva can't protect Am Yisrael. You could read 20 Sifrei Tehillim a week, but if you gossip on Facebook or on Instagram or on the phone or on WhatsApp with your friend, the Tehillim not only didn't get to David HaMelech and God, it didn't even get to the Bnei Korach that wrote some chapters in Tehillim. It didn't get nowhere. Yeah. That's why the Yetzer Hara, his last fight before Mashiach is the fight of Mahloket. And of course, in the Frum world, we don't fight about stupidity, Baruch Hashem. But the Yetzer Hara gets us with Hashem Shamayim. He's a dangerous person, she's a this, he's that. Hashem Shamayim, the name of God. And on that, Rav Shalom Shadon used to say, Romamot el bigronam. They use God's name in their throat, meaning they preach in holiness. V'cherev pipiyot bi'adam, but really they're just murderers with swords in their hands. They mean no good whatsoever. And if you want to know what the test is, let me tell you what the test is. There's a very famous story with the Ktav Sofer. When the Ktav Sofer was supposed to take over to be the rabbi, so he had an objection. Like any younger person that gets a position of power, jealousy causes objection. That's the way it is. I can tell you on a very, very personal level that if I would have known the amount of jealousy that I'm going to cause in the world, getting up there onto the huge stages at such a young age, many years ago when I started, I would have never done it just for that alone. And I have no regrets, because Baruch Hashem, I spread millions and millions of hours of Torah, literally. But it's unreal. I never believed that people could be such jealous lowlifes, because I was raised such an opposite extreme. I always want everybody to be bigger and better than me and more successful than me. But they can't see it. They can't see it. And the Gemara says so. A person in a profession can't see somebody else in the same profession being more successful than him. Definitely when it's a youngster. So the Ktav Sofer is supposed to take over the rabbinic position, and he's pre-warned by people that are close to him that there's a group of guys that are smart people, Talmidei Chamim, but they're not so happy with him getting the position. And when he gives his first speech as a rabbi, they plan on shredding him to pieces. So he should be aware. He should come very well prepared to have answers and everything, because otherwise he lost it before he started. And the Ktav Sofer said, okay, if that's the case, my first speech tomorrow at noon. They said, no, Rebbe, we're trying to tell you the opposite. Wait a few weeks, prepare good. He said, tomorrow afternoon at 12. The next day at 12 he came, and everybody knew this was going to be action-packed and attractions. So the whole town came, not only the people that normally would come to listen. And the Ktav Sofer said, I'm going to give you my speech, but before I give you my speech, a speech means a chabura, a piece of Torah, and halacha, something complicated. I first want to tell you a story. He said, in my father's times, there was a shochet, a person who would slaughter meat, and one day the mashgiach came to check what's going on, and he got angry at the mashgiach, and he picked up the knife, and he threatened to cut the mashgiach's throat off. I told him, get out of here. Mashgiach went to the Khatam Sofer and told him, I don't know what to do. I'm scared of the guy, and so I can't supervise, and God knows what he has to cover up if he has to behave in such a disgusting way. So Khatam Sofer tried to convince him that he should go anyway, and tell him that the rabbi sent him. He was scared. So the Khatam Sofer says, my father came to me, and my father told me that I should go, and I was a little kid, and I said, how am I going to go? If I'm going to go, oy vavoy. He picked up a knife at that guy that he knew for years. Me, I'm going to be finished. So my father taught me a name, one of God's names, that when you think that name, somebody who tries to harm you, gets wiped out right away. And he said, you go, and if he picks up a knife at you or he tries to harm you, give him a warning and think that name, and that's going to be the end of him. And the Ktav Sofer said, I went to him, and he spoke very badly, then he picked up a knife from me and whatever. I had no choice, I had to save my life. I thought the name that my father said, and that was the end of the guy. And then the Ktav Sofer said, and I'm telling you the story to tell you like this, I'm going to give a speech now. And many of you, I'm sure, are going to have questions. And it's good to have questions. Mahloket in Torah is very good, beautiful. But only if it's L'Shem Shamayim. Only if it's 100% pure for Hashem. If you're asking your questions for a pure reason, then it's the greatest thing in the world. And if not, this Shem that I know, I'm having Kavanayin, and that will be the end. And he gave a speech, and there were no questions. If you're willing to get involved in any sort of argument or gossip or conflict of anything, remember the story of the Ktav Sofer and think to yourself, if there's somebody there that knows Hashem, that if there's one tiny drop that's not 1,000,000% L'Shem Shamayim, that's going to be your end. Will you still be part of it, or you will run away like fire? And I promise you, you will always run away. Shabbat Shalom U'Vorach.